Good Shabbos, everyone.
Same to you, Sherry.
You, Sherry.
Yes.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Shabbat shalom.
Ann, are we ready? Ken, are we ready? All right, Dana, whenever you're ready.
All right. Shabbat shalom. My name is Dana Boyle,
And on behalf of Congregation Bethlehem, it is an honor to welcome you to our Shabbat service this evening as we Zoom from the synagogue. For those who wear hearing aids with a T-coil program, you can access our hearing loop using this program. We have headphones for those who do not have compatible hearing aids, and we have large print prayer books as well. The headsets and large print books are located on the side tables under the sanctuary monitors. We want to maintain a warm and welcoming feeling for these services and create a sacred space that will inspire prayer. For those on Zoom, please help us by staying muted unless the clergy invites you to unmute and participate. And while we will not always be able to hear one another, we would love for everyone on Zoom to sing with us. Please know that prayer books are available to borrow if you would like to follow along at home. If you have any trouble with the technology, our Zoom host tonight, Cheryl Wexler, will be happy to assist you. For those praying in person, we ask that you turn off cell phones and be present with us. Also, please keep your mask on, covering your nose and mouth the entire time you are in our building. Although we are physically separated and masked, we are all one community in prayer and celebration. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, our clergy, and staff, we wish you a restful Shabbat.
Thanks, Dana.
Page 359 at the top. 359. An oldie but a goodie.
359.
לברכה ולא לקללה, לשובע ולא לרזון, לברכה ולא לקללה. לברכה ולא לקללה, לשובע ולא לרזון, לברכה ולא לקללה. לחיים ולא למוות, לחיים, לחיים ולא למוות, לחיים, לחיים. לברכה ולא לקללה, לשובע ולא לרזון, לברכה ולא לקללה. לברכה, לברכה.
We just need the button for the lectern. We're working out the technology, everyone. Welcome to everyone who is with us tonight in person, on Zoom, and on YouTube. We're grateful to be together this fall Shabbat evening. It's supposed to be a beautiful fall weekend, a little nippy but sunny. And so we'll find some warmth together in our sacred space, both physical and virtual. Tonight it is my pleasure to be celebrating a very special occasion that we're welcoming the newest Jewish adult in our community, Ben Boyarsky, who will be called to the Bima tomorrow morning. Ben, it is a special pleasure for Beth Hayim to celebrate your B'nai Mitzvah, just as we have done for your father and your aunts before you. And so now I invite you and your family up, including your grandparents, Diane and Jeff Boyarsky, to lead us in candlelighting on pages 2 and 3 in your prayer books. And Karen and Drew are going to start us off.
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives.
Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
All right, Jeff, now you're going to light the candles right in front of your son. And as soon as those candles are lit, Ben, you'll lead us in the blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. We now turn to Kiddush on page 5. I'll ask all who are able to please rise as Cantor leads us in this blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho be'ahava u'vratzon hinchilanu zikaron le'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila le'mikra'i kodesh zecher yitziat mitzrayim ki banu v'acharta ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים בשבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחתנו ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Amen. And now we have a reading from Scott and Ben. Page 8.
I begin with a prayer of gratitude for all that is holy in my life. God needs no words, no English or Hebrew, no semantics, and no service, but I need them.
Through prayer, I can sense my inner strength, my inner purpose, my inner joy, my capacity to love.
As I reach upward in prayer, I sense these qualities in my Creator. To love God is to love each other, to work to make our lives better.
To love God is to love the world God created and to work to perfect it. To love God is to love dreams of peace and joy that illuminate all of us and to bring that vision to life.
Please join me in wishing the Boyarsky family a mazel tov. You're welcome to find your seats. And we look forward to continuing the celebration throughout the evening and into tomorrow morning. Everyone's welcome to take a seat as we turn to page 20 for Lecha Dodi, our mystical Sephardic prayer welcoming in our beloved Shabbat.
Lecha Dodi Vakala Beni Shabbat דודי לקראת חלה ונשבת נקבלה שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד השמיענו אל המיוחד אדוני אחד ושמו אחד בשם ותפארת ולתהילה לך דודי לקראת חלה ונשבת נקבלה שבת נקבלה לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה כי מקור הברכה מראש מקדם נשוא חסות מעשה ומחשבה תחילה לך דודי לקראת חלה ושבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת חלה
Verse 5.
התעוררי, התעוררי, כי האורך ומיורי, אורי, אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה לך דודי, עטרת בלה, גם בשמחה ובצולה, תוך אמוני המסגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי התחלה, בשבת נקבלה. לך דודי התחלה, בשבת נקבלה.
Friends in the sanctuary, I invite you to greet your neighbors Shabbat Shalom. On Zoom, feel free to chat each other and wave.
Shabbat Shalom.
YouTube, feel free to write a message on the page. And we'll come back together in just a moment. We continue standing up on page 26.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיידכו בית ישראל, בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם עולם מעלמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. אלא מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן.
Page 28.
Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Page 30.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shebidbaro ma'ariv alamim, ma'ariv alamim. You call the word to be, spread all the stars in the heavens above. You made the morning and evening, surrounding us daily with signs of your love. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shebidbaro ma'ariv alamim, ma'ariv alamim.
Teach Me by Alden Solovey. Teach me the Torah that God taught only to you, and I will teach you the Torah that God taught only to me. For certainly God taught you secrets in order for you to teach me, and God taught me secrets in order for me to teach you, so that our hearts would cleave to each other's through God's holy word. Page 34.
Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam, Leolam Vaed.
Please be seated as we turn the page.
Ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ושרתם מאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך עלי עלי למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Egypt Inside by Alden Solovey. This I confess, I have taken Egypt with me. I've kept myself a slave to grief and loss, fear and anger and shame. I have set myself up as taskmaster, driving myself beyond the limits of reasonable time and common sense. I've seen miracles from heaven, signs and wonders in my own life, yet I've taken Egypt with me, still waiting for the heavens to speak. God of redemption, with your loving and guiding hand, leaving Egypt is easy. Leaving Egypt behind is a struggle. In your wisdom, you have given me this choice, to live in a tyranny of my own making, or to set my heart free to love you, to love your people, and to love myself. God of freedom, help me to leave Egypt behind, to hear your voice, to accept your guidance, and to see the miracles in each new day. Blessed are you, God of wonder. You set your people on the road to redemption. Page 40.
מי כמוך באים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש. נורא תהילות עושה פלא, נורא תהילות עושה פלא. מלכותך ראו בניך, חוקי הים לפני משה. זני ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כיפדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Continue on the top of 44.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם בין ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם בין ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם וביום השביעי שבת ויבש וביום השביעי שבת ויבש ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
Shabbat is the Place by Alden Solovey. Shabbat is the place where time and space meet, without questioning how the beginning began or how the ending ends. Shabbat is the place where song and silence meet, blessing each other with the gift of rest. Shabbat is the place where dreams and angels meet, yearning together for a world of peace. Shabbat is the place where holiness and eternity meet, praying together for the world to come. We continue with the Amidah, our central prayer that begins on page 46 and continues on the even pages. As you are able, please rise.
יגיד תהילתך, ופי יגיד תהילתך. יגיד תהילתך, ופי יגיד תהילתך. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואמהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, וחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
Please be seated as we turn to page 58 for the first three words, Modim, Anachnu Lach. And we'll take a moment as a community to share that for which we are grateful this Shabbat, this week, this month. If anyone would like to share something that they want to say thank you for this Shabbat, I invite you to do so now. Go for it. Thankful it finally feels like fall. And I heard that there was going to be a heat wave this weekend, and now it's no more. So yes, beautiful fall weather. Yes, Camille. Sorry? A new car after an accident that thankfully ended in no injuries, but now you've got what you need to get around. Carol. 18 acres of corn. All right, that's a good number you've got there. We'll pause to say thank you. Friends on Zoom, you're welcome to type in the chat box, and I'll come back to you, Ann, in just a minute. Any other blessings from the sanctuary? Well, our friends on Zoom type. I mean, I think we have some gratitude in the front. Go for it, Scott.
I'm thankful that my mom and dad are here, my wife, my boys, and son.
So grateful for a milestone moment in your family's life and to have your family by your side. And we'll see even more family tomorrow. Fantastic. Oh, Phoebe. Grateful for school. Amen. And I know there's plenty of parents who are also grateful for school now more than ever. Drew. Ronnie, we're so glad that you are home from the hospital. Successful surgery. All right, we'll pause to say thank you, then we'll hear what friends on Zoom had to say. What do we have, Ann? Great, 2 new knees for Ronnie. Some gratitude for indoor Torah study tomorrow morning so we can have bagels and not freeze our tuchus off, yeah? And that is a great way to end this section.
מודים אנחנו לך, מודים אנחנו לך.
We turn to page 60 for Shalom Rav. The one thing we get to ask God on God's day of rest is for peace, shalom, wholeness, and healing for this whole world.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Asim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Asim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech hadon, v'chol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech hadon, v'chol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Asim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Asim Leolam. V'tovech levarech et Amcha Yisrael, b'chol עת ובכל שעה, בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Asim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Asim Leolam. Baruch atah Adonai, המברך את עמו ישראל, השלום. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Asim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Asim Leolam. Asim Leolam. Asim Leolam.
We now take a few moments for silent prayer to follow along in the words of our prayer books or to offer up the prayers of our hearts.
Radzon imre fi vegion libi lefanecha Adonai suri vegoali Adonai tsuri vegoali Suri vegoali. Amen.
Our thoughts now turn to all those in need of healing. Healing of the body, healing of the mind, healing of the heart, and healing of the soul. If you are keeping someone in your prayers this Shabbat, I invite you to share those names out loud or on the chat box. We also have a number of names on the screen. to send out our prayers for healing. We invoke the names of our ancestors. And Cantor, what are we saying tonight?
Page 253.
253.
May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Yisherach Imotenu Mekor habracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
2 years ago, I embarked on a fellowship for rabbis across the country to really think deeply about leadership. And these are all congregational rabbis, but from all the different denominations that we find in the United States, and a few folks who are originally from Canada. And I've been having conversations with these peers for the last 2 years. In just a couple of weeks, we'll have our final retreat to close out this fellowship. And so try to tie our thoughts together on what it means to be a leader in the 21st century in the Jewish community in America. And of course, we started the fellowship before the pandemic set in. And so we were in store for a much more wild ride than we anticipated. But I cannot help but think about this topic of leadership in reading this week's Torah portion, Parshat Vayera, which we're going to hear even more about tomorrow morning from our B'nai Mitzvah Ben. But I'll let him teach you about Abraham, specifically in this one episode of the portion. But I'm going to zoom out and look at the trajectory of Abraham's story. Tradition understands that Abraham was tested by God. He was the very first person that God selected to choose a special relationship with, that there was a covenant being enacted with Abraham that no one else in the Bible previously was able to enjoy, and that the promise entailed all of Abraham's descendants would be able to share in this same covenant. But it's not quite clear how the covenant is going to unfold, especially with Abraham being childless into his 90s. And so we hear the story of Abraham having trials and tribulations throughout the book of Genesis. It started in last week's Torah portion, Lech Lecha, and it continues into this week. Our ancient rabbis really loved round numbers, and so they came up with 10 tests that God had put to Abraham. Tests that start with asking him to leave his homeland, which was in present-day Iraq, and schlep him and his entire family and all of his belongings to Canaan as God is guiding the way. And the very last of these trials is a very famous story known in Hebrew as the Akedah, the Hebrew word for the binding, meaning the binding of Isaac, that at long last, when Abraham and Sarah are able to have a child who is supposed to embody this promise God made to Abraham, that God asks Abraham to sacrifice that promise in a place that God will show Abraham. And a very important word appears at the beginning of this episode that is near the end of this chapter of Abraham's life. And that's the Hebrew word nisa, that God nisa at Elohim, or at Abraham, that God tested or tried Abraham. And I know much ink has been spilled about, did Abraham pass the test or did Abraham fail the test? Ben will have a verdict on that tomorrow. But I have a different way that we can look at the same exact word. We could look at this story and see that the deity is testing the first prophet who gets to enjoy in God's covenant. Or that very same word can also mean experiment. It can also be related to something that we try to do, an attempt. And we have to remember that Abraham is promised to be the leader of a great nation, and we actually see Abraham start to exercise his leadership skills. And any good leader needs to experiment and to try new things and see what's going to work and what's going to stick. One of the themes throughout my fellowship has been taking risks. What are low-level risks and what are high-level risks? And how do you weigh the success of those experiments? And sometimes you can have really happy accidents as you're experimenting. I'm thinking of the creation, or the identification of penicillin, I believe, was a happy accident. So we watch Abraham try new things as he embarks on this new chapter of his life, very late in life. And some of the moments of leadership that we might want to lift up are when Lot's shepherds and Abraham's shepherds, so Lot is Abraham's nephew, are fighting. We read about this last week. There's only so much food, sustenance to go around for their herds. So what are we going to do? They're on top of each other. They're fighting all of the time. And Abraham says, you know what, Lot, you pick a direction and you can go and settle there, and I will take the other. I think of my two boys. We're getting to the point where we're splitting things in half for them to share. I'm a big fan of the one person splits and the other one chooses. So hopefully my kids will be when they're a little older, they'll actually be able to do that well. How do you, with equity, try to distribute limited resources? And Lot picks, of course, the most fertile of areas. And Abraham says, no problem. I will take the desert and we'll figure it out. So that's one moment where Abraham's leadership experiment, I think, has great dividends. We know that Lot, even though he may have chosen the grassier plains, the people there were not so nice. And we can explore Lot's own leadership on another day. But then we end with some more challenging stories in Abraham's life. That Abraham has strife in his home when he takes his wife's maidservant Hagar as a second wife. And then first Hagar has a son for him named Ishmael. And then only much later does Sarah have Isaac. And how do these two households compete with each other under the same roof? And Abraham has to make difficult decisions. Abraham may not always get it right. We get to be the judge and jury as we read these stories from our sacred scripture. But I think an important value that Abraham embodies is this value of trial and error, of experimentation, of taking risks. The stakes were high for him. He left the comfort and safety of a place he knew to go out and strike a new path. He went to war several times, and it's possible that he didn't have to win. But as he's trying new things and he's leading new people and he's growing his community, he's learning what it means to be a leader, and in the hopes that he will pass that mantle on to the one who comes after him. The beauty of the book of Genesis is we see how one generation passes on what's important to the next. And again, parents, like leaders, don't always get it right. But we see how with each subsequent generation, we get a little closer to the goal, that we get a little closer to the promised land, that we get a little closer to leadership that is going to inspire all of us. It starts with Abraham, He will in turn pass it on to Isaac. He'll in turn pass it on to Jacob. Jacob will in turn pass it on to his 12 sons. And it's only at the end of those generations do we start to see some cohesion, some leadership, especially if we fast forward under Moses and Aaron, where the people can work together, where the experiments don't have as negative of consequences, where people learn how to work together in a more functional way. And so stay tuned for more on my own reflections of leadership. I know that we've had to, out of necessity, take a lot of experiments these past 2 years. You know, the plan for the fellowship was to try one new thing. And we've been thrown into the deep end and had to try a lot of new things. I'm thinking as I look up at the screen at all of our friends who are Zooming from their own homes, some out of comfort, some out of safety, and trying to figure out how do we carve a path for ourselves as a Reformed Jewish community in central New Jersey, one that's celebrating its 50th year, but boy, are there a lot of experiments going on right now. And so I hope we can take inspiration from Abraham, who is far from perfect, but who gives us a glimpse into how we can try to work on ourselves and be improved. And in those moments where we feel like we are being tested, can we flip it around and say, maybe I can test the waters and try something new. We're now going to turn back to our prayer books for Aleinu, our prayer reminding us that we partner with God to make this world a better place, and we're still figuring out what that looks like. Ask everyone who's able to please rise as we turn to page 282.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שהוא נטי שמיים ויוסד ארץ, ומושב עיקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבהי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר היה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Please be seated as we read on page 290. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch, a fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be an ode to lose, a thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched. Mourner's Kaddish can be found on page 294. As I read the following names, I invite you to rise at your place if your loved one's name is recited. Remember two who died this week: Jerry Sherman, brother-in-law of Adria Sherman, and Marilyn Epstein, mother of Lee Epstein. The family of Peter Reich is in the period of Shiva, the first 7 days of mourning. Peter is the husband of Patricia, father of Melissa and Allison. And the following loved ones are in the period of Shloshim, the first 30 days of mourning. Zvia Herman is remembering her father, Ari Greenbaum. Mark Bloom is remembering his uncle, Bernie Jacobs. Mark Perkis is remembering his cousin, Mark Haven. And Donna Tomford is remembering her mother, Lynn Levine. And remember these loved ones whose yard sites fell this week: Their passing occurred at this time in years gone by. Ruth Arias, Rosalie Marin, Clifford Altfeld, Marlene Brown, Max Cohn, Blanche Wolfe Cohn, Gail Rockoff, Molly Landy, Bill Lichtman, Bella Edberg, Sydney Smiler, Claire Rice, Maury Solomon, Gussie Verschleiser, Edward Cohn, Daniel Tischler, Stanley Weinberg, Linda Weintraub, Dove Benjamin Wisnia, May Glassberg, Martin Golden, Carrie Meyer, Michael Halberstadt, Leo Steinberg, Alan Lichtenstein, Jack Malice, Michael Selikoff, and Max Weissman. In their memory, we rise as one community and join together in the hallowed words of Mourner's Kaddish on 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divrach yerutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyomechon, u'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'izman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudisha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may their memory always be a blessing. Ask everyone to please be seated as we invite Dana back up for a few announcements.
Hello again. On behalf of the Board of Directors of Congregation Beth Chaim, thank you for joining us this evening for Shabbat service. Tomorrow morning, our weekly Shabbat Torah study is at 8:45 in the chapel. At 9 o'clock, our B'nai Mitzvah family class will meet. At 10:30 Shabbat morning, Benjamin Boyarsky will be called to the Torah as one of Beth Chaim's B'nai Mitzvah. Please join us in wishing the Boyarsky family a hearty Mazel Tov. Sunday morning, religious school and the board retreat both begin at 9. At 9:15, Bagels and Blocks will be building Jewish connections. At 9:30, our adult ed series, Swimming in the Sea of Talmud, continues in the chapel and on Zoom. At noon, Zoom school resumes. It's another busy, should I keep going for Tuesday?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, okay, sorry. It's another busy Tuesday at Beth Chaim. The executive committee will meet at 7 o'clock. At 7:30, the choir will rehearse and the Introduction to Judaism class will meet. At 8 o'clock, the Reimagining Jews Task Force will meet. Zoom School meets this Wednesday afternoon for our 4th to 6th grade religious school students at 4:30, followed by the 7th to 10th graders at 6:30 for pizza and class in person. Join us for Nosh and Knowledge at 11 a.m. In the evening, we will have 2 meetings. The 50th Anniversary Committee is meeting at 7, followed by the Interfaith Committee at 8. Please join us every Friday night at 7:30 for a congregational Shabbat service next week with our choir. Please note that all choir members will be tested for COVID-19 prior to service and will be singing unmasked. Visit our website, bethchaim.org, for details about upcoming events. Thank you as always for being a valued member of our community, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
That was more than a mouthful.
We got a lot going on is the good news. Kendra, what are we closing with tonight?
Page 327.
327.
327. It's in Kelohenu in Hebrew and Ladino. Ein Kelohenu, ein Kadonenu, ein Kematenu, ein Kemoshienu, non como nuestro nuestro Señor, non como nuestro Rey, non como nuestro Salvador. Mich Eloheinu, mich Adonenu, mich Malkeinu, mich Moshienu, ¿quién como nuestro Dios? ¿Quién como nuestro Señor? ¿Quién como nuestro Rey? ¿Quién como nuestro Salvador? No del Eloheinu, no del Malkeinu, no del Moshienu, daremos a nuestro Dios, daremos a nuestro Señor, daremos a nuestro Rey, daremos a nuestro Salvador. Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, bendito a nuestro Dios, bendito a nuestro Señor, bendito a nuestro Rey, bendito a nuestro Salvador. Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. Tú sos nuestro Dios, tú sos nuestro Señor, tú sos nuestro Rey, tú sos nuestro Salvador.
Correction, there is no adult ed this Sunday due to the board retreat, but Talmud will reconvene in a week's time. So our apologies for the misinformation. We'll now close out with our priestly blessing as we ask everyone to rise in passing down this teaching from our Torah that we've been sharing, leaders have been sharing with the people for thousands of years.
Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha.
May God bless us and protect us.
Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka.
May God's light shine upon us and may God be gracious to us.
Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.
May we always feel that God's presence is near, and may we be blessed with the greatest gift of all, the gift of peace.
Amen.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.